Summer days are winding down, and that means I've hauled out my clothes storage box and I'm switching my wardrobe from summer to fall. I got a bit of a nasty surprise when I did that, and I'm going to show you what I did about that. Plus, our tomatoes are producing wonderfully right now, and I'm making tons of gazpacho, and my girls and I are making a French fairy tale path up to our house. So join me for some late summer homemaking, transitional fall outfits, and my favorite summer recipe today on Old World Farmhouse. I got out my winter sweaters from the drawers in the dresser where I keep them, and several of them had what looks to be moth holes. I have been in denial about this problem for maybe about a year and a half. I'll find a little hole last year in my sweater, and I think, oh no, it's just wearing out. But I sort of half-heartedly dealt with it. I've washed the sweaters before I put them away, and put some cedar and lavender in if I remember. But that's about it. And I know that if you have an infestation, I don't know. I hate the smell of mothballs. They're incredibly toxic too and dangerous, so we don't use those. But I remembered reading in Rita Koenig's book, Domestic Bliss, that a friend of hers swore by horse chestnuts and said that moths hated them. So I remembered that we have a couple of horse chestnut trees. I actually don't know, horse chestnut trees, I don't know, down by our creek. So my girls and I went out to collect horse chestnuts, or actually my boys were really excited, and they said they knew where they were, and they ran ahead of us, and they were pretty far down the creek. So they ran down there, and they grabbed 40 horse chestnuts for me, and the girls and I ended up taking this long, meandering walk. They were really motivated because I had promised them that they could play this math video game that they love if they brought me some horse chestnuts. So they brought me 40, and we had this beautiful walk in the creek. I love late summer. I love all the sounds that the insects make, and the creek is just a beautiful place to be. It's so much cooler. It's amazing. The closer you get to the water, the cooler it gets, and we haven't had a lot of rain, so it's really easy to walk in the creek bottom. I found a lucky horseshoe. Sometimes we find these on the property. My boys like to hang them up in their room for good luck. And we're learning about shapes in school, and my little girl pointed out that this tree looked like a triangle, and I was so proud of her for seeing these shapes and angles. Sometimes I feel like I don't have time to go for these walks. I have so many things to do up at the house, but I never regret it. There's the triangle. The boys came running to me with the horse chestnuts, and they had collected, indeed, 40. I think these are such a beautiful color. When I was a kid, I used to love to collect them too. I was so disappointed to hear they were poisonous, and it was many years before I tasted a actual real chestnut, because they don't really grow where we live. And this was the one to have feasted on the most. There were holes in the back, there were holes in the front, there were holes in the sleeves. This is where I keep my sweaters, and we will see. I dropped some horse chestnuts into every drawer. Then I put my sweaters back. They're clean, so I just put them back in there, and I don't know, I might take them out again though and put them into a plastic bin with a tight fitting lid. That just might be the safest thing to do until I figure out what is going on with this infestation, because once they're in, I don't know, I haven't really looked into it, but I think you have to get them out before you can put things into repel. I don't know. But I like the horse chestnuts idea. I really liked because they're free, and I knew where to find them, and they're pretty. I've been waiting all summer for our tomatoes to come in, and it feels like it's taken a little bit longer than usual, although I don't really know. But now they are coming in, and coming in strong, and it is awesome. And so we've got all these tomatoes in the kitchen, and all of a sudden we are infested with flies and fruit flies. So I've been struggling with that. I got some fly paper, and I got those little fruit fly tomatoes. I love those things. they come pre-filled with this stuff that attracts them, and then they crawl into the tomato, and then you can just refill them with apple cider vinegar. So I like to keep them around the kitchen. It was after a few days of all these flies, I finally got around to processing all these tomatoes. Now, my favorite way, I love tomatoes, and I am not a canner. My husband cans. I'm terrified of canning, although I promised him next year I will try to can tomatoes with him, because there is just nothing like homemade jars of tomato sauce in the winter. It tastes like sunshine in the middle of the bleak winter. It's wonderful. But my favorite thing to do with tomatoes, and a way to process a lot of tomatoes really fast, is to make gazpacho. Gazpacho is a cold tomato soup. It's a very typical Spanish recipe, and I got to know it when I've studied in Spain for the summer. In the south of Spain, it's very hot, and there is nothing as refreshing as this cold tomato soup on one of those hot, hot southern Spanish days. It's extremely popular there. You can even buy it at McDonald's. They serve it in like a little cardboard like milk carton, and you can drink it kind of like it's a tomato juice, but it's really a soup, and it couldn't be easier to make. You need some stale bread or crusty baguette, like so. That's perfect because I'm into making baguettes most days now, and you can just take a few slices of that, you crumble it up, you cut up your tomatoes so they'll fit in your food processor. If you don't have a crusty baguette, in a pinch you can use saltine crackers. You can toast white bread and then crumble that up. Anyway, my measurements were not super exact because I've made this so many times, and I had a lot of tomatoes, more than my favorite recipe. Anyway, you cut up your tomatoes in like quarters so they'll fit in. A splash of vinegar. My recipe calls for sherry vinegar, which I never have, so I used a little balsamic and a little red wine. I'm not entirely sure what sherry vinegar is. I think it has a slightly sweet flavor. That's why, hence the balsamic. But that, a handful of salt. I used kosher salt. And then, so the bread, the kosher salt, drizzle in some olive oil, a couple tablespoons. It's not a oily soup or anything. And then just blend up the whole thing, puree it in your food processor. This part is really important. You want to get all the skins and seeds out because they really don't taste good in the finished product. I have this food mill, and I just put it in like the smallest mesh sieve thing and crank it out. If you don't have a food mill, I guess press it through a sieve. I'm not really sure. I'm sure there's other ways to get the seeds out, but I love my food mill for this. It's like the perfect thing, and it goes really fast. Although after a while, I had so many tomatoes, I did enlist my son to help after a while. You can make a batch of gazpacho with as little as like a pound of tomatoes, but I had so many that I just kept I made them all into gazpacho. My husband and I love it so much, and one or two of our kids are coming around to it, but we don't push it on them because we love it so much. We're happy to drink it all ourselves. I forgot to mention you can put some garlic in if you want. There's variations. Some people like to put some bell peppers in. I've never liked that myself, but I do like to put in a bit of garlic. And it's just a great way to process a lot of tomatoes, especially if you don't like to can. My hand is raised, or you're afraid of canning, or you've never done it, like me too. We can drink, I don't know how many pounds of tomatoes I had, 10, 12, I'm not really sure, but I whipped this up in an hour, and then it took a little longer to get to process through the food mill. But I left my son to do that while I ran another child to a practice. And so I would say, all in all, the whole thing took 2 hours, and we had, I don't know, 4 liters of soup or something like that. You can just stick it in the fridge. It'll keep for a few days. You could certainly freeze it too. And I'm sure you could, well, I don't know, I guess you could can it, but I would say you could pour it into a gallon plastic bag, and put it in your freezer, or just, it doesn't last long at our house. So we had this bumper crop of tomatoes, and I'm sure that I'll be making more gazpacho as the days go on, but I was really glad to get all of these tomatoes out of the kitchen and get our fly situation under control. I hate that feeling when you've got fruit flies everywhere. It just feels awful. So as soon as I got the tomatoes processed, the flies calmed down a ton, and I've got all the traps out. So I'm sure in another couple days, I'll be back to feeling like my kitchen is my own again. I will link my favorite recipe for gazpacho. This, I'm following it very loosely here, but it's the one that I jumped off from, and it's by Mimi Thorson from her cookbook, not a kitchen in France, her other cookbook. Anyway, I will link it below. It's a great, easy recipe if you're interested in checking it out. But just know that basically, garlic and tomatoes, a little bit of olive oil, some crumbled dried bread, that gives it some body. That's why it's so yummy. You could leave it out, I guess, but it wouldn't have as much body. The soup wouldn't. Some salt and pepper. It's really couldn't be simpler. I like to take the seeds and things from the food mill that are left in the sieve and scrape them out and mix them up with a little maybe basil, olive oil. It makes a great little spread to put on bread. So if you don't want to discard all that stuff, I mean, you can, but I love to do that. Definitely going to be on the lookout for some new Fair Isle sweaters, but in the meantime, you can repair holes in sweaters if they're not too bad by just sort of gently bringing the edges of the knit together from the backside with a little bit of hand sewing. I tried that and the holes they pretty much disappeared. I mean, I know the men's are there, but you can't really see them from a trotting horse, as my mother would often say. This is one of my favorite things to do in the late summer, early fall, ever since I started doing 10-item wardrobes a couple of years ago. I really cut out tons of clothes that I had, and I fit pretty much everything into this large clear plastic bin. So in the, spring, summer, my fall, winter clothes go into here, and then in the fall, winter, my spring, summer goes in. So I have a really fun time bringing everything out and looking at it. It's a great time this time of year to just look at what you've got and assess it, decide you still like it. Maybe there's something you're hanging on to that you just don't like anymore, even though it still fits or it's fine. This dress is a good example of that for me. Like, I actually get compliments when I wear it, but it's just not my style. So I have decided to de-accession it. It's a word from my library science days. Just pass it on to someone else, get rid of it, someone who could enjoy it more than I can. I've gotten ruthless, not just pretty ruthless, over the past 2 years. At first, I was very afraid to get rid of clothes, and now I am less so. If it doesn't spark joy, like Marie Kondo says, it is going. That dress is a beautiful dress I wore as a bridesmaid one time, but I haven't worn it for many years, and I know I just don't care for it anymore. My jean jackets I'm going to put away, even though it's fall winter. I'm just not feeling the jean jackets right now. I'm sure that another season I will be really excited to see them. So it's a great way too, if you're only wearing, you're making like a 10-item wardrobe per season a year. When you get it back out, you might really be happy to see it again. Maybe you just need a little break from it. I don't know about you, but I just do not feel like wearing my summer clothes anymore, even though it's still quite warm here in Kentucky. I'm really looking for some transitional outfits. So I've just pulled out some pieces, and I thrifted some new fall pieces last week, and I'm wearing them with some lighter shirts. Like this outfit I have on right now is one of my summer blouses, but I'm wearing it with a brown tweed wool skirt that I picked up at the thrift store. And it's not too hot. It's in the 80s here. It's not too hot to wear it in these 80-degree temperatures. And it just gives me that feeling of fall, or the feeling that fall is coming. I'm just not feeling the flowy, breezy dresses right now. So it's a good time to start just checking out what I've got, putting some things away, pulling some things out. I'll put more things away as I refine my 10 items, and I might give some more things away as I refine my 10 items. I wore this skirt a lot last year in my 10 items, but I think I might actually be ready to pass it on. Plastic bins are great because they will protect your clothes against moths, and I might actually start storing all of my sweaters in one instead of in a wooden dresser because I am so tired of the moth holes, but we'll see how the horse chestnuts work. Luckily, I stored this cashmere sweater in a plastic bin over the summer, and it has emerged in perfect condition, no holes or anything, which makes me think that moths are definitely munching on my other clothes. These are just Rubbermaid plastic bins from Walmart. I think that the best thing is to get them in clear. It's really worth it because then you can see what's in there and you don't forget. That is my top recommendation for storing clothes away. When we moved in, we took a wheelchair ramp off here without much forethought. So it was this muddy mess, and then we just put down some paving stones that we luckily found out in the yard. But this path has always been something that I have wanted to make better. And now that my girls are older, they are so much fun. They really get into the spirit of things with me. And they had this idea to gather moths and try to get it to take in the dirt areas in between these stones. So they know where the moss grows on our property. That's the great thing about living in the country is that things like moss, you probably have some. So they went off and scavenged a lot of moss for me, and then we worked together to plant it around these flagstones in the path. I did a quick Google of will moss take if you plant it, and it just said basically yes, just kind of rough up the area so it has something to grip onto and lay it down and water it. And it might go brown, but that might just be because it's going dormant and it probably will come back. It's pretty hardy. So hopefully that thing I read is correct. I didn't do a whole lot of research. I don't know much about gardening, but I also don't want to get stuck with analysis paralysis, which I have for years, which is why this path is just now we're starting to work on it, is I just analyze too much and get paralyzed. So taking a page from my daughters and just going for it. They grabbed the moss before I could say, let me think about it. And so rather than have it all sit there, we just decided to lay it out. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. It's a way to learn, and you don't always have to learn everything by carefully researching and reading in a book, which sometimes you learn by doing, which goes against the grain for me. I guess as a teacher and a librarian, I'm sort of addicted to book learning, but that is definitely not the only way to learn things, and often it's not even the best way to learn things. Sometimes you just have to see for yourself. I'm dreaming that this is going to be like an enchanted cottagey pathway. I have always loved these flagstones, and we found a cache of old solar lights in an outbuilding, and I put them up. I'd like to get some more for the footpath. We do have some hanging overhead, so slowly the front is taking shape, even with no landscaping skills and spending virtually no money. It's still slower than I would have thought, but slow and steady and little by little wins the race. And so with this outside part, I'm trying not to put any pressure or expectations. Just we do a little one day, great. It's like an extra bonus. And, before you know it, it's already looking better. The improvements are marked. There was nowhere to go but up. But working on my front garden has got me thinking about just generally any kind of homekeeping task or new project or new skill set that you want to develop. Just go for it. Just do a little bit. I think I can't count the number of times I've stopped myself from learning a new skill just because it felt so overwhelming that I didn't even want to start. Gardening is a great example. It's always felt really overwhelming to me. It still does. But you know what? I on a whim went to the nursery and bought a couple lavender plants and planted them on a total whim, and one of them died and one of them's doing great. And you know what? That's great. And now we're planting this moss, and some of it does seem to be taking, and we had a great time, the girls and I. So if nothing else, it's a beautiful memory. And that's just kind of the way that life goes. It doesn't always go as in this straight linear line forward. Sometimes it's a lot of spirals and switchbacks and things going slower or going in a circle, but it's a beautiful thing just to learn by doing and just have fun doing it. Like, I could put all this pressure on myself and think like, oh, I want this to look perfect. I want, when we have people come over, I want this to impress them, or I want to show this amazing before and after transition on my YouTube channel or something like that. But, I think the value really is in just making it a fun, relaxing thing to do. Like this particular day, it was kind of a busy day. I was really tired and I had been feeling kind of stressed about some other things, and I just went out here and just played with the moths, and with no expectation and no goal in mind, and it was exactly what was needed. I learned something from my girls who they go outside and they just play. And I remember when I was a kid and I just went outside and I just played and I did things like pull up moss and plant it, or dig holes, or, plant a seed that I found or something. No expectation, really, no goal in mind. But I think as adults, and busy moms and wives, we can get so goal oriented and we want the achievement or we want the process, and I'm definitely that way, and I'm totally a type A personality anyway. And now that I'm back teaching my kids, I've got my like goal and achievement hat on big time because we're in the school year. And I think that it's great to watch your kids and take a page, or if you don't have kids, watch children take a page from their book where they are just playing for the sake of playing. I read somewhere, I think it was Albert Einstein, who said that play is the real work of childhood. Play can be a really important and valuable form of work, though, I think even for adults. It can be a real source of joy, or at least relaxation. It was so relaxing to kneel out here in the shade and listen to all of the sounds of outside, the cicadas, which this time of year is just my favorite. I love how they sound in the late summer, and the birds chirping, playing around with my fall and summer wardrobe, finding things at thrift stores, trying different outfit combinations. I'm not a stylist. I'm not a fashionista, but it is an enthusiasm of mine, and it's a fun thing to play with, and it's a fun thing to relax with. It's a great creative outlet, and so I just want to put that out there and encourage all of you to, first of all, thank you so much for watching my channel. And if you like my channel, if it's helping you, I would really appreciate it if you could like this video, because it helps my channel to grow, which I definitely would love, and spread to more people. But beyond that, I just want to encourage all of you this week, as you're going through, to approach things, try to think of things that you can do just for fun, just to play without any goal, not even the goal of doing it well. Like maybe it'll come out badly. Who cares? Just something to play around with. What's something that you could play around with? Could it be trying a new outfit combination like I'm doing this week, or trying to plant something like I'm doing, or what are some other ideas that you have? I would love to hear down in the comments as we do this switch from summer to fall, which is traditionally a more serious down to business season. What can we do to just find play and relaxation? I'd love to hear in the comments what you like to do to relax without any expectation of a long-term goal or achievement. So I will look forward to hearing all of your comments down below. If you'd like to know more about the 10-item wardrobe, I have a whole playlist about that, and I will link that down below as well. It's really a fun hobby. If you're looking for a hobby to get into, I highly recommend it. Take care. Bye for now.